Very cool. It's episode 187, and I'm a little slightly late because FedEx. Oh gosh. So I could be distracted at any time potentially, but if not, we'll proceed. So I also might have to cut it short. I don't know. But we're doing a discussion today. Are the freaking frogs gay? We'll find out, I guess. Let's do sponsor shout outs before we get into it, of course. VetDNA.com for all of your testing needs. Use code #ShitHappens for $5 off the crypto panel. Shane Kelley, Small Town Exotics. He still has Panther Chameleons. I'm pretty sure that's his update. Check him out. He doesn't. Does he have a website? SmallTownExotics.com? Maybe. Check that out. Or Husbandry Pro. Thank you, Shane. Bravo Zulu Ball Pythons. She will be at Tinley, so you can go say hi. She'll have a little bit of 2023 and 2024 stuff and some resin art, and they'll be vending with Connolly Herps at booth 911 at Tinley Park. Whoever's going, hopefully you have fun and enjoy yourself. Stoneage Ball Pythons, Justin, he's having fun, I'm assuming, in the Pacific Northwest, breeding ball pythons. Check him out for Clown Pied project stuff. I don't know if he's going to be at Cascadia Reptile Expo, but I know Andrew, Powerhouse Pythons, will be there with ball pythons, rodents, gopher cocoa, and other fun stuff. It's this weekend, March 15th and 16th in Vancouver, Washington. Gray Family Snakes, I think they're visiting Tinley, so you can also say hi to them too. Tag Holdback Rack on Instagram, and I'll tag and I'll share it. It'll be fun. GrayFamilySnakes.com for all the best deals. And then Chris at BS Reptilia didn't get an update, but I'm sure he still has lots of ball pythons, blood pythons, boas, colubrids doing their thing, selling chipper. I think the next show I have on here this weekend is the Lehigh Valley Reptifest on March 16th and Gettysburg on March 29th. I did it. Chat's not popping off, but also I didn't announce this one very recently, so no surprise there. Quirky's here, Aurora's here. She loves happy frogs. Chris PH, husband's here. What's up? Let's check my messages. So I had a snake get shipped, supposed to be delivered yesterday, was not delivered. It was just delivered like 5 minutes ago. So I'm trying to see the status of the snake. Maybe we'll have happy announcements. If not, bad announcements. But we're talking about frogs. Why are we talking about frogs? Because it's funny. Honestly, that's why. It's a funny concept. Gay frogs. All right, let's talk about frogs. A lot of amphibians. Oh God. If you ever written an impact statement or whatever in a scientific paper or just, a paper for school, you end up using platitudes. Amphibians are often referred to as like the canaries of the environmental coal mine. They are like the first ones to die or the first ones to show symptoms or whatever, because they have a biphasic life history where they're aquatic, larval phase, and usually terrestrial, but not always. Sometimes it's still aquatic, adult phase, so they're exposed to lots of the environmental contaminants. And they also have permeable skin at all life phases, basically. So if there's something in the environment that would hurt them, a frog will be hurt by it and might be hurt first, which could be an indicator that that problematic contaminant is a problem for other things like people. So a lot of people get really excitable when stuff happens to frogs and other amphibians. This is a quick aside, but plethodontids don't have an aquatic larval phase. They actually do the whole larval phase in the egg terrestrially. So a lot of them can live places where other amphibians that have fully aquatic larval phases cannot. So sometimes you'll see a plethodontid just under a log in a patch of trees in a cemetery in the middle of a city. So that's a life hack, to not have an aquatic larval phase. Right. A long time ago, there was a lot of hype about that. And I thought about including it here, but this is really about gay frogs, not frogs with extra legs. And it turns out it wasn't a specific chemical. It was a parasite that was doing it. And that's, parasites aren't good either. But I don't know. We'll talk about it. So is there anything that can make a frog gay? Anything in the whole world? No, the answer is no. Because, like, there's a problem with, like, language here. Because gay would be, like, the frog is homoerotic. What Mr. Jones was really referring to was intersex, not gay. But I think gay sounds funny, and that's why I used it, and that's why it's a meme, because it sounds funny. But really what he was trying to communicate with intersex. So that's what we're talking about. That's what I'm talking about now, because I don't know if frogs are homoerotic. There are some species of animals that do that, obviously. But when he was talking about, he was meaning intersex. So that's what we're going to talk about. What is intersex? So there's a lot of things you could like clump into intersex. One of them would be like feminization. So the secondary sexual characteristics of the frog that would make it appear male are less or non-existent. So like the nuptial pads. Hold on, I got a message. I gotta type. I'm managing two things at once poorly. So the nuptial pads on a frog is where they sort of hold the female frog during amplexus are usually darker and sometimes sort of protuberant. Maybe those aren't there. Maybe like the vocal sac anatomy is different. So other anatomical secondary sexual features that might not be fully in place, even though it is a male. Mixed gonads. That means one gonad might be a testes and one gonad might be an ovary. All right, let me message again. This is so weird. So okay, we're back. There could also be a male gonad, so a testes with sperm production happening, but also immature eggs in it that are like left over from an earlier developmental time. Or they could just be like completely infertile or subfertile, so they're maybe making less sperm than they would normally, but there are no eggs. Or even or they could have a complete sex reversal. So they are maybe chromosomally male, presenting female ovaries, make eggs, make babies as female. Those are sort of general categories of intersexness. Let's try this a little bit, yeah. What's a galaxy frog? So like a reed frog? Okay, so when Mr. Jones was talking about gay frogs, he was attributing gayness or intersex traits to atrazine. What's atrazine? It's a annual broadleaf herbicide that controls grass broadleafs, and it's normally used in normal agriculture. It's used and it's approved in other stuff besides corn, sorghum, and sugarcane. I think pineapples, just other stuff. But we use it a lot in the Midwest, in the middle of the country. And it does have, we know a lot of things about it. It does have a certain toxicity. The current MCL is 3.4 parts per billion. And there's a new EPA rule that maybe they should raise it to 9.7 parts per billion. I don't know. There are problems with it, but we'll see if it makes frogs intersex or not. That's where I'm going to be. Also, the other thing I thought was interesting was it can be transported by wind and rain. It can be like aerosolized or ride on particles. The half-life in soil is 60 days because bacteria will digest it, sun will degrade it. But the half-life in the sediment of lakes could be 10 years. So it'll blow from the Midwest into Canada. Very cool. And rest in their lakes. There may not actually be an EPA, so whatever. So Hayes et al., 2010. I think this is the specific paper that Mr. Jones was concerned about. This is African clawed frogs. He bred male. So African clawed frogs are ZZ males, CW females. You can make a male female by putting a bunch of estrogen in the water of a baby male toadlet and turn all of them, these males, females. And so they made forced all male babies, and then they raised them up. So all ZZs, all known males, in 2.5 parts per billion concentration of atrazine. And remember, this is a limit. And they got intersex properties. Here's what they got. Here's a boy part. And in this frog species, they sort of get a little vulva. So they got sort of like half a vulva or a full vulva on the intersex ones. Normal testes, sort of bigger testes that are half full of eggs. And some of them got so feminized, they had fully functional ovaries that had fully functional eggs, and they bred successfully with regular males and made babies, even though they were ZZ females, hypothetically, just because of atrazine in the water at this concentration. So that seems very intersex of them. So you're like, oh no, maybe we should have less atrazine in the water. And Hayes's promote, and there's a lot of other things, but Hayes also was like, the mode that happens is atrazine upregulates aromatase, which turns testosterone into estradiol in an otherwise normal functioning gonad. And so they are just feminized that way. That was the Primrose mechanism. There were some other papers that agreed, but whoopsie daisy, most papers could not reproduce the results. Even at 100 parts per billion, could not make intersex frogs with just atrazine in water. So then, were they really that gay? Or was something else going on that we don't know about? I don't know. We'll see. The thing is, like, I don't know if it was Hayes's fault per se, because he was actually harassed by the company that produces atrazine. He did a lot of TED Talks. It was kind of like, me air quote this pretty hard, exciting. But because of the lack of reproducibility, like most papers that tried to replicate could not get intersex frogs. So I don't think atrazine in your water is good, though, because there's a lot of correlative studies sort of landscape wide with atrazine, but maybe it's actually attributable to something else, where like spontaneous abortions in humans go up if there's a certain amount in drinking water. Ectopic pregnancies go up. Endometriosis goes up. PCOS. So I'm not saying it's good, but I'm saying we fail to have reproducibility in terms of truly intersex animals with atrazine. Specifically, the thing that Mr. Jones was so insistent was making the frogs gay. They did an order of magnitude bigger, 100 parts per billion, and could not get intersex frogs. Oka et al., 2008. And maybe that's also a scam by the manufacturer, but I am saying, let's keep going. So what if it was pee? Everyone is peeing all the time, especially me. And we all have our endogenous estrogens and androgens that we produce, and we're peeing it out. Also, some of us use artificial ones, whether it's for birth control or HRT or, the hormone therapy we use for menopause. We got a lot of estrogens floating around, and we're peeing them out. Estriadol is the most biologically active. Estrone is weakly active. We make a little bit of that in our ovaries. This is what people find the most in bodies of water. And estriol, it's a placental estrogen. It's we don't really see it that much, not that biologically active, doesn't really matter. But all of the artificial estrogens, like ethanosteridol, and there's other ones, would be biologically active if they're in water at a high enough concentration, could bind to froggy binding sites, making them maybe feminized. There's also phytoestrogens, so estrogen derived from plants, mycoestrogens, estrogen derived from fungi, and metalloestrogens derived from sex robots or derived from metallic compounds that are just sort of naturally in the crust of the earth that sort of wash into bodies of water. And they just happen to look like something that could fit in an estrogen receptor on an animal. It's just sort of an accident. What's interesting about phytoestrogens is there's like, for some reason, still a ton of debate about, God, like if you look up clover and like, should you graze your sheep on clover? Because clover, depending on the kind of clover, but especially red clover, can make a lot of phytoestrogens. And they're like, don't graze your sheep on it because they'll have spontaneous abortions or just like less fertility over time. And maybe that's true, but it's sort of like a dose response curve. Sometimes it depends on how long, how many seasons, whatever. So maybe some phytoestrogens, microestrogens, and metal estrogens are totally normal, and a frog is like not that worried about it. But maybe there's too many. Maybe it's too much. Maybe if we're peeing in the water too, deers are peeing in the water. Maybe that is too much. I don't know. So like, do you have this like pea soup of girl soup floating around these frogs? And we're like, how do we quantify the amount of estrogenic activity? They end up being like relative to estriadol, because they're all of these different compounds have a different like percent of effect, and they end up like trying to do bioassays to figure it out, because you have to have some sort of relative reference. But it's really hard to tease all of these different factors apart. We'll get to that. So Lambert et al. 2015 was like, okay, let's check the soup theory. We're going to go into the forest. We're going to find a pond that has normal ecosystem services. And then we're going to go into a pond in a suburban area that's pretty natural, but not supernatural. Maybe it's got a septic tank. Maybe it's got sewer that has been processed, but still dumps into it, because most sewage cleanup things don't actually do that good of a job of pulling out all of the estrogen and androgen in it. They do some of it. They digest some of it, but not all of it. And if you have a lot of people peeing in the same spot, and it all goes to the same spot to be processed, it can be quite concentrated, hypothetically. There's also maybe clover lawns draining into there, extra deer peeing in there. Who knows? Who knows? So they were like, let's go check these two ponds and see what we find. So it says hard to read, but this one is relative maximum estrogen estriadol equivalency quotient. This is a forested pond, a pond that receives septic effluent, and a pond that receives sewer effluent. And this one is just total estrogen, and then the sex ratio. So the forested pond was male heavy. The septic effluent one was 50-50, and the sewer one was female heavy. And this is phytoestrogen concentrations, almost none in the forest, a little bit in the septic, a little bit in the sewer. And then this is metalloestrogens, a little bit in the forest, a lot more in the septic and the sewer. So they're like, oh, maybe these estrogens are making these sex ratios exist. This is a correlation, not a causation, but they're like, oh, maybe it's driving with the theory here. If you ate enough soybeans, it could, but most people don't eat a lot of unfermented soy. So let's put it that way. Oh, my picture didn't load. Lame. Let's try again. Why is it not loading? Here's my picture. Estrogen activity is as American as apple pie because plastics are as American as apple pie. I don't know why that picture doesn't want to load. Whatever. None of them are loading. All right. So now we're moving on. Moving on to plastics. Because some of them, when they leach stuff, a lot of the compounds they leach are estrogenic, and maybe more so than certain pesticides. Maybe not, we don't know. But bisphenol A, BPA, it's pretty clear even relatively low doses that are environmentally very normal would cause not gender swaps, not that far, but just histologically detectable impairments in gonads and affected morphological traits of metamorph frogs of multiple species. That's from Tamchik et al. 2016. So I think people know that now. So there's a lot of like BPA-free, bottles, baby bottles, stuff like that. It could have been the ooze from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. That is how we get Battletoads. But so like this is from Yang et al. 2011. It turns out if you hurt plastic, it likes to leach. Likes to leach stuff. So almost not all plastics, but many plastics will leach estrogenic chemicals. And this is like how much and the kind. So these are BPA-free baby bottles and water bottles and not labeled as BPA-free. They're still leaking a certain amount of estrogenic content. And these ones were sort of induced to leak it by either autoclaving it, so warming it up, throwing it in the microwave, or leaving it in ultraviolet light. So that's not good. Don't do any of that to any plastics. Not all plastics do this, though. We could pick plastics for us to use that don't leach stuff, but we're not very good at it. Polyvinyl chloride, I did check. There wasn't. Polyvinyl chloride seems to be relatively stable unless it's one that's mixed with phthalates. And phthalates are a plastic softener. So I do not actually know what the kind of PVC we use for reptile enclosures is really made of, what the like proprietary blend is. But because ours are stiff, I doubt they have that much phthalates in it. And phthalates don't just like cause gender problems. They seem to be like more neurological. I don't know. None of this is that great. but for now, I'm gonna go with it's probably fine. Then microplastics. Oh my god! So you have this like stew of different kinds of plastics that's degrading, getting broken down by mechanical action, by UV, by heat, cold. It's maybe leaching stuff that's estrogenic, stuff that's not, stuff that's carcinogenic, stuff that's not. But I think they're not really like indicting microplastics yet in making your frogs gay. It's mostly cytotoxic and mutagenic, and obviously has some sort of fitness decreases, which are bad. We don't like that for our frogs. Okay, so well, why are they gay? Why are they gay? I think we all watched Jurassic Park. We remember that some frogs were supposed to be able to change gender, Can I present it now? Hell yeah. They all probably do it, is the short answer to the story. So Lambert, this is the same person who was trying to figure out, if the suburban ponds had a different amount of estrogenic activity than the forested ponds. And this is in green frogs. So clamitans found sex reversals both ways in sort of more naturalistic ponds and more urban ponds, just because frogs are gender fluid. They're having fun. They say sexual development in green frogs is a complex process whereby some individuals develop sexually concordant, some develop sexually discordant early in larval development, and some begin developing as they're predisposed to unitypic sex, but sex reverse into the opposing phenotypic sex later in larval development, but prior to metamorphosis. So they're free spirits. And then totally normal, non-polluted, happy forest. We don't know why they do this. And this is like a percent of phenotypic males. It's a female bias. Everywhere was female biased, except for even this one was still female biased, but not as much. Maybe that's good. Maybe if you can choose, you would want to have more females sometimes. So there's less sort of competition between males for females. So even if they were born male, born male, they'll be female in these locations. We don't really know why. But in squamates, sex reversal can happen even though they're genetically sex determined because of temperature. We know that not for everything, but for many things. So usually what happens, and it has to happen a certain way because the reverse would hurt the offspring, so it probably dies. But where they have XX, XY systems, you will get female genotypes that end up males. And for ZZWs, you will get ZZ females. So here's, you're killing me. Bearded dragons do it. So if you're incubating all the eggs, you get a 50-50 sex ratio up until about, 30 degrees Celsius. And then you'll get all females, no matter what the genotype was of the babies. And this is a little skink species from Australia. And so you'll get all males up until, 22, 21. And then you'll get a 50-50 sex ratio. So this one's biased, like to be normal to be cooler and normal to be hotter. This might not be a flaw, but a feature, because there might be a reason to want to produce all of something, and it's maybe not like a mess up of the system. Like in the spotted skink, this is from Tasmania, by the way, that the longer the gestation, the more proportion of sex reversed males there are. So females that end up males. So maybe if it's really cold, there's a reason to produce more males so that they could maybe immigrate somewhere else and then like get the mom's genes to spread somewhere better. So there might be like a survival advantage to it. But I guess what the point is a lot of more animals are more gender fluid than I think most people think. So like, it's not necessarily an alarm that some of the frogs are intersex, because it's probably like a feature of all frogs, and it's probably a feature of all squamates to some extent. The more like further evolved they go, the less likely they are to be able to sort of pivot it back around. But it looks like temperature sex determination and genetic sex determination have like evolved back and forth a couple of times in different lineages, so they can kind of be in between. And here's one. There's supposed to be a funny picture here. Oh, irritating. Let's see if we reload it. Wee. All right. It might be why we can't figure out the genetic sex determination of some of the species that are in captivity. Most of them are probably determined genetically and everything's honky-dory, but sometimes, just naturally, they maybe are a little bit on the spectrum, the gender spectrum. And maybe chondros are. I don't know. Maybe. Trans dragons, that's right. Yeah, I mean, you can see how it would work. Like sometimes it would be okay to make all females. Sometimes it would be okay to make all males. Sometimes it would, like the mother could even have a mechanism where she could like pick, let me just put that in hard quotes, like she could make a nest somewhere where she's like, oh, I want to bias my DNA hard right now because I think it's going to be a good time to raise sons. So I'm going to stick them in a, but it also could just be like a cool accident of being sort of in between a temperature sex determination modality and a genetic sex determination modality right now. We don't know. Nobody knows, but it seems pretty normal. So while we do not want pollution, are the frogs gay? What I'm saying is it's complicated. There are things that are estrogenic that would maybe be more, would be bad. And a lot of things just murk frogs. You put salt on a road, the salt washes into the water, it murks the frog. There's certain things that are just like cytotoxic in general, mutagenic in general. But a lot of frogs are already gay, is what I'm saying. A lot of frogs are already intersex. A lot of squamates are already intersex, and they're going to be intersex. So you can't do like an intersex panic. We have to know what is there even more of a rate. So when Hayes found his intersex frogs to begin with, they may have already been wanting to be intersex before he even introduced atrazine, and that's why no one can replicate, or less people can replicate, because they were already primed to be intersex all along. So are the frogs gay? Maybe. Yeah, I think, oh God. So especially the primitive snakes, it's possible because they're less and less different, like the chromosomes are less and less differentiated, that the new snakes that exist might not be able to do it. But older ones, more primitive ones, may be able to with temperature or some other manipulation, not just do parthenogenesis or androgenesis, but also have a baby that has one genotype, but not actually be phenotypically expressing that genotype pretty often. Which study are you talking about, Quirky? Do frogs even have sex? The only frog that has sex is the penis frog. The tailed frog from the Pacific Northwest. Everybody else, they're just holding on and hoping for the best. It's hard to like the atrazine study. Hayes was 2011. Let's go back in time. 2010. Like there was like a real hype time where everyone's like, oh no, the frogs have 10 legs. And then we're like, oh no, the frogs are intersex. And then the fish are intersex. And there are intersex things, but some of them are naturally intersex or sex switchy on purpose. So you need to tease out what's the effect of whatever the thing you're trying to test is from the natural background rate of being intersex or switching sex. I don't know if we learned anything today. I did go for 34 minutes. That's pretty good. But that was it. Do we have any questions, class? Did I talk too fast? No, it happened a lot. Like they were worried there was some sort of contaminant that was special. I think we've just decided it was like officially, not officially, like it's probably a parasite, like getting into the something and then it causes like Hox gene replication. Mm-hmm. And what's hard? Oh, the snake arrived successfully. That's so good, actually. I don't have toads or frogs, and I've never bred any. Has anybody else bred any? The snake is mad that arrived. There's still 11 people here. That's pretty good. Did we learn anything? Do we need to go back to anything? Did I talk too fast? Because otherwise, I'll just cut it off. I think. Oh, God. So, what is interesting, though, going back to like phytoestrogens in general, I talked about it a little bit, but like you can actually make like a goat or a sheep's uterus bigger by just feeding it clover and do all kinds of other stuff. But it has a lot to do with how many estrogen receptors are on a particular organ. So cows don't do that. Like you could feed them a lot of soy. So it's very like species dependent, location dependent, and time of year how much estrogen is in certain plants. So it's all very relevant. I'm glad. Thank you. And I'm saying you're not all soy boys out there, and neither are the frogs. I think they're just equipped to like be cooler than we give them credit for. Imagine if you're a little frog and you like end up in a pond somewhere. You know, you might need to make some girl frogs sometimes, or boy frogs. Nature is so gay, actually. I'm excited to see more people do it with more squamates because, you know, these are pretty far apart. I wouldn't be surprised, like Lisa said, if even more squamates do it, and even more squamates have different rules for how they do it, and that's how they like survive, right, in the wild. It's very cool. And then and these animals can breed but the thing is like if they breed, if they're a female, like a male acting female, it will breed with a female like a male, if that makes sense. So like they can make, just like these frogs, you can force them to be ZZ males. But then you just make infinity males. It can be its own problem in a way, but hopefully the next generation is just not forcing as much again. Does that make any sense? All right, I'm going to cut this party off. I didn't go over like the normal temperature sex determination program because I just wanted to prove that the frogs were supposed to be gay all along. The gay call was coming from inside the house. I could do that like a different time, but they don't actually fully understand how that happens either, because it's like a suite of genes get turned on and they're like, oh, you're a boy now. That's probably still happening in these genetically sex determined animals. It's just happening in concert with it. And sometimes it matches up, and sometimes it's like, JK dog, you're actually a girl now, even though you have boy chromosomes. Yes, it's the Futanari lifestyle, is what I'm saying. It's just, most of these papers are so, like, I don't know. Especially like, if you want a fun one to read. This paper was fun. Lambert, they're like, we don't fucking know nothing. They're like, there's so many frogs gender swapping both ways all the time, everywhere. We were convinced it was whatever, phytoestrogens or whatever. Wrong. They're just having fun, doing frog stuff, and they all grow. A lot of these gender swaps, either way, they grow up and they reproduce, and they are functional frogs. This is like 10% of the population to maybe like 2% all the time. Gender swapped. That's it. It's okay. It's okay, everybody. It's okay. All right, I'm done. I don't know why this took me so long to like produce, but it did. I had way too much like reading to do. This isn't really in my skill set, and I struggled a little bit to make a coherent message, but I did in the end. Just don't burn plastic and huff it, I think, is the moral of the story. And most of your frogs and stuff are okay. Just maybe like polycarbonate was another compound that was like really inert. So if you want like polycarbonate tubs, maybe we should use those more than other kinds of tubs if we want like no estrogenic compounds in it. Otherwise, like most frogs, toads, snakes, lizards, they have functioning kidneys and they have functioning liver, so they can take a little bit of stuff in their environment that's not good, and they will process that out. Goodbye. So I wouldn't worry about low doses of everything, because we do the same thing. We can deal with it. You know what I mean? It's just the poison is in the dose, right? So don't blast anything. But I would like to see more caging that's more inert, Yeah, Andrew is 100% correct. Frogs are gay sometimes. That is absolutely correct. All right, everybody. I don't have a member live topic because I'm living my best life right now. So if anybody wants to come on the member live on Thursday, I'm going hiking on Saturday or Thursday. Sunday, that'd be cool. You can talk about anything you want for fun. We could talk about gay frogs then. So just volunteer if you're a member. Otherwise, hopefully you squeeze your snakes and your frogs tighter, because now you know they could be gay. All right. And also, none of this is intended to be mean to anybody, by the way. It's supposed to be like elucidative of how cool they are that they could do gender reversals. Right? All right, everybody. See you Sunday sometime. One of you needs to volunteer because I don't know what to talk about. I have no idea. I'm out. I'm out of topics. We'll have a regular